Hey guys, it's Deborah here. I'm going to show you a little dollar store craft for the holidays for your dolls. I'm going to show you how to make a Santa hat for the MSD size doll. That would be a size 7/8 wig. This is Prudence from the Ellowyne Wilde line, and her head's actually probably a little bit closer to a 7/8 because she's kind of got a wide head, but these hats will work for the 6/7s as well. Alright, and everything used today can be purchased at the Dollar Tree or any dollar store, theoretically. Okay, first thing you're going to need is a stocking. My dollar store has all kinds of varieties of them. This is just a traditional red and white one. It does have a cool star embossed pattern on it. So we have that one. This particular green one actually came from Walmart last year after Christmas. And but I do know that the Dollar Trees do carry the thicker plush fabric stockings as well. And then Prudence's hat also came from a Dollar Tree stocking, and this kind of has a diamond harlequin pattern on it. Alright, the next thing you'll need, so you can get about 2 hats per stocking. More if you're doing like a smaller size, say for like a Pookie Fee, or of course more if you're doing even smaller than that. I will have patterns on my blog for the MSD size as well as the Pookie Fee size. The next thing that you're going to need is a dollar store sewing kit. And these are really cool. For $1, they're actually a really good deal. You get this really cute little carry bag, which actually works really well as a bag for larger dolls or a suitcase type bag for the MSD dolls. You get 4 spools of thread. Mine has red, white, green, blue, and black, which are all basic colors. We're going to use the red, the green, and the white today. Depending on the color of your stocking, you're going to want to match the color to your stocking. And then you're going to want white for doing the pom-pom and the trim. It also has a little pair of scissors, which are really kind of crap. So don't attempt to cut your stocking with this. Honestly, don't even attempt to cut your thread with them. But, you know, in a pinch, they might work. There's a paper tape measure, which you may or may not need. I find it works handy just to keep it in my purse, and there I have it. We're not really going to need the thimble today. Although, the cool thing is, if you use a hairdryer and warm the bottom of it, and then press it down on the table, you get a flat base. It actually works as a perfect sized cup for the MSD size dolls. We have a needle threader, which if you have trouble maybe seeing the eye of the needle, these are phenomenal to have. You got this great little box full of some extra buttons, some safety pins, as well as straight pins. We're not really going to use any of that today, but those things always come in handy. And of course, the last thing is the needles. And I was actually surprised as to how many needles actually come in this kit, and the various lengths, the diameters, as well as the eyes. So for $1, this is actually a really good sewing kit. If you're just starting out, I highly recommend the Dollar Tree sewing kits. They come in pink, red, black, and purple. Even if you're, you know, not a beginner sewist, it's great to throw one in your car for, you know, last minute clothing repairs, things like that. You never know what you're going to need it for. Okay, last thing you're going to need, well, almost last thing, is a bag of pom-poms. This is also from my Dollar Tree. My Dollar Tree sells these in their Christmas section. You may be able to find some in the regular craft section at the Dollar Tree. I have been told that some Dollar Trees don't carry them, period. If not, just, you know, a bag of the medium-sized pom-poms, which are right about 1/2 inch. For the MSD size and for the Pookie Fee size, you're going to want like the 1/4 inch, 1/3 inch type size. And of course, if you're doing a larger doll like an SD or an American Girl doll, you could of course go with the great big ones. I'm partial to the traditional red and white or like the green and white, but you know, do it whatever colors you want. So pom-poms. And then of course the last thing you're going to need is the patterns. In the meantime, between now and when I actually get them up on my blog, might take me a day, I apologize. But what I did is essentially I have a rounded triangle. And for the MSD size, it's 4 3/4 across at the bottom, and it's 5.5 inches tall. And this creates the size hat that I used on Prue with a kind of short little flop bit at the top. If you want to make that longer, by all means lengthen the top. The important thing is the diameter around her head. And then for the Pookie Fee sized, what I've done is 3.5 inches across the bottom by 4 inches tall. I will be honest, I have not actually test fit this one yet, so I'm going to work on that one later, and I will make any adjustments in the comments of the video post as well as in my blog. Alright, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your stocking and you're going to turn it inside out. And once you have it turned inside out, you're going to just flatten it nice and smooth. Like this. And then just take your pattern, and I prefer a Sharpie marker, and just trace around it. I like to print my patterns out onto cardstock, and that just gives them a little bit more stability, and then it allows me to reuse it. Whereas if you print it onto just regular paper, it's going to get distorted, especially as you trace around it. You can also print it out onto regular paper and glue it onto a piece of recycled cardboard, say from a cereal box or something like that, to give you a nice sturdy pattern. Alright, now, because we've done this together, or I should say, excuse me, the stocking is still sewn together, it's in one piece. So what we're going to do is actually cut it out at the same time. So we'll cut out both the front and the back together. So we're just going to cut that out, and then just follow your lines around. You don't need to be super precise, but you don't want to go too far in on the lines or too far outside of the lines either. So just kind of follow your lines around. Make sure your fabric stays smooth so that both pieces are roughly the exact same size. Alright, this is essentially waste. You can either throw it away, or you can tuck it in a box or a bag or something and save it to use as stuffing for plush, bedding, pillows, couches, anything like that. That's up to you. Okay, so we have our hat pieces cut out. The next thing we're going to do is get our needle threaded up. Now, normally I would sew in the same color thread as to what I am sewing on. So normally I would sew green thread on green fabric. To make it a little bit easier for you guys to see, I'm going to sew white thread on the green fabric just so you guys can see what I'm doing. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and just drop out a needle here. Do double check your needle to make sure that it did get sharpened at the factory. I have found that that is a small pitfall of using dollar store needles, is sometimes the quality control on them isn't quite so good, but this has got a nice sharp point to it and got a good eye. So what we're going to do is we are going to take 2 yards of thread, and I actually measure a yard by just taking the end of the thread in my hand and pulling it out and stretching my arm straight out. And basically if when the spool of thread is at the spot of my nose, that's about a yard. So you just kind of stretch it out until you have a yard of fabric, and then bring them back together and do it one more time. So now you have 2 yards of thread, and I'm going to bring the ends together, and I'm going to snip them off. So I have my 2 ends together, because what we're going to do is we're actually going to double the thread. So we'll actually be sewing with 4 threads at once, which is going to make a slightly sturdier seam, and it's going to allow us to work a little faster, and then your end result is going to be sturdier. Okay, you're going to thread your needle, and you can either do it regular, you know, without the aid of the needle threader, or use your needle threader, and that just goes in through the eye, and then you put the thread through the eye of the needle threader and pull it back through. And therein lies the problem with the dollar store ones, is they won't go. And so, alright. This is actually my fault. What I did here is the needle eye is too small for the threader, the wire threader, and the thread itself. So then I do it the old-fashioned way. And I just get the tip wet just a little bit, and it should go right in. If you need help threading the needle, use the needle threader and go with a needle with a larger eye in it. If it sticks like mine was doing there, don't try to force it, because you will pop the wire out and then your needle threader is essentially useless. Alright, at the top of the thread, go ahead and knot it once, knot it twice, so that you have a nice thick knot at the end. And then you can go ahead and just trim off most of the excess fabric. So you're left with roughly 1/8 of an inch above the knot. Okay, now it's time to start sewing. And I'm going to start at the very top of the hat. I did it flat here because I want to be able to kind of gather it, which is going to make a platform for the pom-pom. Now with this stitch, we're just going to go straight in and out, back and forth, and you're going to take about 6 stitches in through here. Now as you pull it, it's going to kind of tighten up on you a bit, which is just fine. That's what we want it to do. And pull. Okay, so we got 6 stitches there. Now the next one that we're going to do is we're out the back, and we're going to bring the thread around the side. And so it's going to pull it tight there. Now again, you're coming from the back, you're going to put your needle in through the front and the side there. Okay, and we're going to do that 2 more times. So your needle is coming out the back, and you're going to go in through the front and out the back and in through the front. Okay. Pull it nice and tight, and that's what you should be looking like. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to tie a knot here, but we're not going to cut the thread. Okay, so I'm just going to tie a knot, and if you gently push your finger over it as you're pulling the knot will go all the way down to the bottom. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to start on the sides. So I just start from the top, and about 1/4 of an inch in, you're going to start sewing, and you're going to do that same in and out stitch all the way down from the top to the very bottom. Okay, so in and out. And you want to try and be straight with your stitches, but if your stitches aren't perfectly straight, it's not a huge deal. You're really not going to see them. You want your stitches to be relatively short and relatively close together. So you're looking at about 1/8 of an inch wide and about 1/8 of an inch apart. Okay. So just in and out all the way down. And we're going to go ahead and speed this up for you. And I'll fast forward the video and we'll get on to the next part. So just go ahead and stitch that all the way down. Just make sure that you're keeping it pretty flat and smooth so it's not bunching up on you. Okay, when you get to the end, what you're going to do is go back to where your last thread ended, your last stitch ended, excuse me, and go through and come out. You're essentially back stitching, tacking your work down, and do that about twice. And then come out on the top, and we're going to tie another knot. Finger over top, and good. And then double it just to be secure. Okay, now we are going to go ahead and snip the thread here, because the next part that we're going to do, we're going to need more thread than what's left on here. Don't try to work with more than that 2 yards doubled, so you're working with essentially 1 yard of fabric or thread, and it's folded in half. So you're really only working with 18 inches of thread. If you try to work with more than that, you're going to run into problems with it being tangled. Okay, so essentially we have the first part done. What we're going to work on now is the brim of the hat. And what we're going to do is we're going to fold up the edge, and we're going to stitch that down. It's not entirely necessary, but it's going to give you a much better, more finished edge. And again, I'm going to go ahead and work with white thread just so it's going to be easier for you to see. So go ahead and rethread your needle with another 2 yards of thread, doubled over and knotted so you have 4 strands thick, 18 inches long. Okay, now for this next stitch, we want the fabric to retain a little bit of its natural stretch. So what I'm going to teach you is a small zigzag stitch. And it's really not difficult. It's simply a straight stitch done on an angle. Alright, first thing I like to do is hide my knot inside the fabric. So on the back side, make a stitch, and we're going to tuck it in there, and then we're going to fold it over. We're only going to fold it over about, what is that, right about a 1/4 of an inch? Closer to 1/2 inch. Okay, now we're going to take our stitch, which is at the top, and we're going to go over and down. Okay, so your stitch is diagonal. Now the next one, from the back side, you're going to go up and over. Keep it flat. So this one goes the other direction. So on the back side, my stitches are all going from right to left. And then on the front, they go from left to right. So we're just going to take this small zigzag stitch across the entire base of the hat. Now, if your thread gets kind of tangled like that, it's okay. Just give it a pull back up towards you to straighten it out, and then pull it back down. Okay. Now, these stitches don't have to be tiny because we kind of want them to be large and have some movement to them. Like I said, this is what allows the fabric to continue to stretch. And that's what will get it to fit around your doll's head and to stay there. So go ahead and do the diagonal stitch all the way across the base of your hat. And I'm going to speed this part up for you, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next stage. Okay, I've got just a couple more stitches to go here till I hit the end. And again, we're going to go ahead and tie a knot in it. This time we're not going to cut the thread off because we should have enough to go ahead and stitch the remainder. So go ahead and tie your knot. Finger on top of the knot to hold it down. And double it. Alright, don't cut your thread off. Now we're going to fold it back together, right sides together. And just like we did going up, or excuse me, coming down from the other side, we're just going to straight stitch it all the way up the top. So, in and out, up and down, all the way to the top. Okay. And if you do find yourself running out of thread, if you have less than, say, 3 inches of thread left, stop, refill your needle, knot it off, refill your needle, and finish up. It's much harder to try and tie a knot with less than 3 inches of thread, especially as a beginner. Okay, so tie your knot. Snip your thread. And turn your hat right side out. And you essentially have a winter cap. Okay, so let's give Prue a try here. Now, depending on the fabric you use will depend on how your hat looks. This particular stocking was much plusher, so you definitely get a more stand-up gnome type hat. If that's cool with you, great. If you want it to lay flat, just folding it over isn't going to keep it there. So I'll show you how we can remedy that when we're all done. So for now, Prue's hat is done, and we're going to add the trim. For the white portion of the trim, I actually am going to just take the trim of the stocking here, and I'm going to cut it just above the line right here at the top. So for ease, I like to just cut the seam that they've sewn in there to kind of open it up a little bit. Alright, and then that gives me an open area to work with. And then I'm just going to trim this off. Now the only downside to the trim is this folded piece. There's really only one folded strip like this. So this edge, you'll only get one hat out of each one. However, you have plenty of the white fluffy material left. So for your second hat out of the stocking, what I would do is cut a strip, roughly about 1 inch wide, as straight as you can across the top. If it's a little off, it doesn't really matter. Of course, you're more than welcome to actually measure it so that you get a nice even strip. But you're going to go ahead and just cut that strip. And then what you'll do is you'll just fold it in half. And that will create the same look as the top portion up here. Okay? So, either way, what you're going to do is on this portion, you are going to want to match your thread to your white fluff. So normally that's exactly what I would do, but to show you guys what I'm doing, I'm going to use the green thread so you can see what's being done and how I'm doing. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you a stitch called a blanket stitch, which is a simple stitch to do, but it creates a really neat finished edge, and you can actually use this on all kinds of things, for instance, blankets. But again, you're going to use that same 2 yards of thread. And load it into your needle. Same as we did for the body of the hat.